what you're referring to as the circle leadership. And I can look back at Girl Scout days, you sat in a circle, you know, and you all participated in creating what do we want to do with our troop and all that. So I think that was always in the background in my mind, not really aware of what that was about. But I think that's a great model. In fact, I was interviewing Jean Houston the other day, and she had been a Girl Scout her whole life, too, and I think she can relate to that type of leadership. So I just was a person that I can understand the bigger picture and the details to get it done. And so at first I was responsible at Unity Church because I was the hired person there and I got the team together, but I led them. So it was still more, probably you could call it a hierarchy in a sense that I was a leader, and when you're a founder you're always a leader. And circle leadership doesn't mean no one's a leader. It means everyone participates, and we always need leaders. So, and then when I developed the corporation where we incorporated as a nonprofit in 1998, I was the, I guess you call it CEO of the, because you need one, and I ran it. And so it wasn't so much, even though we met as a circle to plan the conference, I led the organization. We had a board, we had a couple staff, and so it's still that old form of leadership. And I always wanted, back in those days, because there's a lot of stress on that. You know, there's a lot of strain on your shoulders of you carrying it. And I always wanted to kind of share that. I always pictured a triad leadership, I would call it. I was trying to get where there'd be maybe 3 of us that were really equally sharing this. And I went on a retreat, a personal retreat up at Whistler Mountain. It might have been 2001, I can't remember exactly. And went out sat by the river and was meditating about this. And all of a sudden I looked down at our logo, which is a circle, has many circles in it. It's got arches, which are the seven arches, which was the symbol of Sophia.
Logo.
Our Woman of Wisdom logo. And inside it's a circle, and there's this 3 spirals. And I went, oh my goodness, it's in our logo. You know, little do you know when you're forming stuff. I mean, it was formed back in 1993, the first part of it, and then it was developed a couple years later. It was embellished to have the Sophia, the 7 arches, and each arch there's a woman's symbol from different ancient cultures. Right. And I looked down and I went, wow, it's in our logo. You've got the mother, maiden, crone. You've got these 3. You've got these swirls, and you've got a triangle and a circle in the middle. And I thought, well, here's the board, here's the staff. The 7 arches around the outer edge was all the committees. And so I wanted to create this where each committee had a liaison that was on the board. And you formed this sort of circle. There was a triad, there was the 3 swirls in the middle that was the triad leadership. Well, we didn't really have a strong infrastructure at that time to really get that in motion. We had 3 members on our board, we had a couple of part-time staff and myself, and it didn't quite, I couldn't get it working. And then it was a couple of years later when I'm always, it's conference time around January, pretty stressed out, and it's just, especially when we were that big of a conference, a week long, and there'd always be those nights where you just kind of go to bed pulling your hair out and, you know, crying or whatever you need to do. And so it was one of those nights, and I picked up a book. Well, you know, you're just under stress. There has to be one crying, releasing of tears when you're going through this. So I picked up this book, and just in the middle of the book, and it was a paragraph describing Groundhog Day. And I went, wow, that's interesting. I picked up another book, and it was a paragraph describing Groundhog Day.
Again, yes.
And I went, oh my goodness, this is, you know, talk about being hit on the head. This is what, I'm in this movie and I gotta get out. And it just became clear to me, well, now it's time to step down as the CEO, executive director, and I realized now I can make this logo, this circle leadership that I came up with before, I could make it work because I was going to step down as the executive director. We were going to open up board elections to be from the community. We had and I told the board, I said, this is what I'm wanting to do. So they agreed, and we have an annual meeting. We have about 75 people show up, and we formed all these committees. Now every committee had liaison to the board, and I realized it came, instead of coming from the inside of the core, the staff and board and stuff, and going out, it had to come from the outside of the community creating the board and the structure and the leadership. And so at that time, we created the circle leadership, which has been existing still today. So we have been doing that for probably 7 years, and it's been developed. We develop it as we go, because we're learning as we go. And I think there's some other models out there. I hear of a few of people doing it, but there's not a lot of models of so you kind of create as you go, and you got to create your ground rules. One of the books we use is Calling the Circle by Christina Baldwin. It's an excellent book, and there's some other books too. And we set up a lot of our our vision, our mission, our ground rules, and we started off having the liaisons and all the committees. Right now we've shrunk a bit. We've gone through a period of years where we were smaller, and we basically we just needed to step back, and we basically just did the conference. We had the conference committee, and now we're starting to see the energy of expanding again. But we have grown so much. Our circle of the council of leadership has grown so much together. We're very bonded. We're very we've worked through a year. Our current council have been together, the same people, for 2 years, and so we've really grown close, and we've really developed our communication, and we've worked through a lot of things, because issues do come up, especially when you do this kind of model. We have a model, and we realize the circle model lends itself to heal some of the dynamics that you have, the interpersonal dynamics and the communication dynamics you have on any kind of a board or any kind of organization. And so we realize, going back to our ground rules that we created in the circle, our paradigm of the circle leadership, we go back to our ground rules, and that's where we reconnect again. That's where we strengthen, get through some of the issues that we've gone through. And we just had a big healing on this fall. Even being at it for 7 years, we're still moving forward on creating this. And it's fulfilling. It's very exciting. We get very excited about it. It has its frustrations. Sometimes what we realized this fall was one of our problems is and it may not be indicative of circle leadership, it's just getting to action. We can brainstorm and do the visioning on and on and on, and partly as women process a lot, and so you keep, we get kind of tired of just going through, again and again the same thing, and we realized one of our difficulties is getting to action, and one of the other difficulties is accountability, which can be on any board. You have a board meeting, you say you're going to do this, come back to the next board meeting, and 4 out of 5 things didn't get done. Everybody has jobs. It's all volunteer. Everybody's working, and it's hard. And so we really made a commitment to really look at our accountability, and really outline what our action items, who's doing, and we're better at it now. From realizing, going through many years of having the difficulty of getting things done, we're now really taking accountability very seriously. And our minutes reflect action items, who's to do, and we decided, it's who, what, when, where, like when we leave a board, because a lot of times people just assume things are going to get it done, which usually means they don't realize falls on my shoulders, because I kind of handle a lot of the day-to-day, and I'm like, I'm stopping that. I was like, I have to put my boundaries, like, I can't do that anymore. And so it's outlining who's going to do it, when's the deadline, what's going to be done, how, and all that. And so when we leave the meeting, we have more, we know, we don't leave going, once you wonder who's going to do that. That kind of thing.
Right, so actually it becomes a balance or rebalancing, because that's kind of the more linear and logical or masculine, if you will, way
have to,
of
yeah.
right doing things, and so after kind of the healing and the relationship dynamics are kind of in place, this rebalancing of this self, kind of like the having both wings, you know, and coming to the middle of it is where it can really fly.
Yes,
So.
and one of the things about the feminine part of it is that, or the circle leadership is all